He won't even know what he's signing. That's what my son Caleb whispered to the man in the gray suit while I lay in a hospital bed, unable to lift my head. The stroke had turned the world into a blur of beeps and white lights. But my hearing? It was razor sharp. I heard the crinkle of the deed to my ranch. 30 years of my life held in Caleb's shaking hands. This didn't start in the ICU. It started 6 hours earlier at my dinner table. I've run a machine shop since the 90s. I can tell a motor is failing just by the sound. I should have heard the friction in my own son. Caleb had brought a business partner over for steaks. Halfway through the meal, a heavy throb hit the back of my skull. I reached for my water, but my left arm was a dead weight. I collapsed. My chest slammed into the mahogany table. The room went silent. No one moved. I was on the floor, staring at Caleb's shoes. He didn't call 911. He didn't even stand up. He just wiped a smear of sauce from his lip and glanced toward my office door, where I keep the floor safe, before finally looking at me. "He's just exhausted, Marcus," Caleb told his guest. "Give him a minute." They finished their steaks while I memorized the pattern of the rug, trapped in my own body. That night, in the recovery room, he didn't ask if I'd live. He just pressed a pen into my right hand, the only part of me that still worked. "Just sign, Dad," he hissed, leaning close enough for me to smell the bourbon. "It'll be over soon, for everyone." I looked at the stranger in the suit. I looked at the deed. I didn't sign. I just went stone still and closed my eyes. Caleb walked out, thinking he'd already won. He thought I was a broken machine. He was wrong. I was just listening, and I'd already heard enough to make him regret every word. The next morning, the stranger was gone, but Caleb was back. He was wearing my favorite Rolex, the one I kept in the floor safe he'd clearly cracked while I was dying on the rug. He didn't think I could see it. He didn't think I could see anything. "The doctors say it's a long road, Dad," he said, staring at his phone. He looked at my heart monitor like it was a countdown clock. "The shop is hemorrhaging money. I had to let Miller and Saul go. It's for the best." My chest tightened. Miller and Saul had run that shop with me for 20 years. By firing them, Caleb wasn't saving the business. He was gutting it to make the land easier to sell. I stayed limp. I kept my breathing shallow, mimicking the broken machine he wanted me to be. "I've got a buyer for the north acreage," he continued, talking to the wall. "It'll cover your care at a facility in Mesa, far enough out that the city noise won't bother you." Translation: far enough out that I'd be forgotten. He finally looked at me, his eyes cold and hungry. "I need that signature, Dad. If you don't sign, the bank seizes the equipment by Friday. Do you want to lose everything, or do you want to help me save what's left?" He pressed the pen against my fingers again. This time, I didn't just close my eyes. I let my hand twitch, a tiny, rhythmic spasm. Caleb's face lit up. "That's it. Just a little pressure. Come on, Dad. Push." I didn't push. Instead, I let the pen slide through my fingers and clatter onto the linoleum floor. "Damn it!" he hissed, slamming his fist into the bed rail. "You useless old—" He stopped mid-sentence. He hadn't noticed the nurse standing in the doorway with my chart, but I had. I saw her eyes go wide at his outburst. Caleb didn't realize it yet, but he had just provided the first piece of evidence I needed. Caleb froze. The nurse, Sarah, didn't say a word. She set my chart down with a sharp thud and stared at his hand, still white-knuckled on my bed rail. "Is there a problem, Mr. Miller?" she asked. Her voice was flat and dangerous. Caleb forced a hollow laugh. "No, no problem. Dad's just being stubborn. I'm trying to help him focus." By yelling at a stroke victim, Sarah moved between him and my bed. "Step out, now." Caleb backed away, adjusting my Rolex on his wrist. He pointed a finger at me. "Friday, Dad. The clock is ticking." As the door clicked shut, Sarah leaned over me. "I know you're in there, Marcus," she whispered. "I've seen sons like him. They think the silence means you're gone. I know better." I didn't answer. I needed her to witness, not join the con. The next day, Caleb brought his buyer back. A man named Vance, smelling of cheap cologne and desperation. They stood at the foot of my bed, talking about the ranch like I was already buried under it. "We'll subdivide the back 40, Vance said, sketching lines in the air. "The shop? Bulldoze it. Scrapping the machinery alone nets us 60 grand. Caleb smirked. "Get the paperwork ready. I'll have the signature by tomorrow. He's fading. Doesn't have the strength to fight me." I watched them through half-closed lids. Caleb thought he was gutting my legacy. He didn't realize that firing Miller and Saul had technically shuttered the business. The bank wouldn't be seizing equipment on Friday. They'd be freezing every cent he touched. He was cutting his own throat and smiling while he did it. By Thursday, the hospital room felt less like a sanctuary and more like a courtroom. Caleb walked in, not with flowers or a prayer, but with a notary in tow. He looked haggard, panicked. Likely hawked to cover the gambling debts I knew he'd been hiding from me for years. He was sweating through his shirt, the smell of desperation rolling off him in waves. "Last chance, Dad," he said, his voice cracking like dry timber. "The buyer is pulling the deal at noon. Sign the deed now, or you'll be rotting in a state ward by Monday. You really want to die a pauper?" I looked at the notary. She was young, her eyes darting nervously between Caleb's shaking hands and my motionless body. Then I looked at Sarah, the nurse. She was adjusting the monitor in the corner, her face a mask of professional stone. She didn't blink. She was my silent witness, exactly as the law requires. I didn't reach for the pen Caleb was shoving into my face. I reached for the plastic water pitcher on the bedside tray. With my paralyzed left hand, I gripped the handle. I didn't drink. I squeezed. The pitcher tipped, and a gallon of ice water erupted across the table. It soaked the legal deed, the notary's briefcase, and Caleb's expensive suede shoes. "You old fool!" Caleb lunged at me, his face twisted into a snarl of pure animal rage. Sarah was on him in a heartbeat, her hand firm on his chest. "Back off! I'm calling security right now!" "He did it on purpose!" Caleb screamed, pointing a finger at my hand, the hand I had already returned to a state of perfect, heavy stillness on the sheets. "Look at him! He's faking the whole thing!" The notary didn't wait to hear more. She gathered her dripping, ruined papers, her face pale with shock. "I cannot notarize a document under these conditions. Certainly not with this level of hostility. We're done here." As security ushered them toward the elevators, Caleb turned back, his voice a desperate, ugly hiss. "The bank's coming tomorrow, Dad. You think you're smart? Sunset, and you're on the street." He was wrong. The bank wasn't coming for the ranch. I waited until the room was silent and the adrenaline had cleared. Then I looked at Sarah. "The phone," I rasped. My voice sounded like grinding gravel, but it was steady. "Call Miller. Tell him the Keyman protocol is active. Execute the buyback. Now." Sarah didn't ask a single question. She just handed me the receiver. I wasn't just withholding a signature. I was pulling the floor from under my son's feet. Friday morning arrived with a silence that felt like a sharpened blade. Caleb didn't show up. He couldn't. By 9 a.m., the Keyman clause had finished its work. When Caleb fired Miller and Saul, the only two employees legally bonded to operate the heavy precision machinery, the insurance company flagged the shop as at-risk abandonment. They didn't just notify the bank, they triggered an automatic freeze on all operating accounts. I sat in my hospital chair, watching the morning news. Sarah walked in, her phone buzzing. "Your son is at the nurse's station," she whispered. "He's demanding to see you. He looks frantic." "Let him in," I said. My voice was getting stronger. The gravel was turning into granite. Caleb burst through the door 3 minutes later. He wasn't wearing the suit anymore. He was in a wrinkled t-shirt, his eyes bloodshot and wide. "What did you do?" he roared, stumbling toward me. "Bank cards declined. Shop locks changed. My car. The repo man's at the driveway." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even look away from the TV. "I didn't do anything, Caleb," I said quietly. "You fired the men who kept those accounts active. You stopped the engine. I just didn't restart it for you." I have debts, Dad, he screamed, his voice cracking. If I don't get that signature by noon, Vance walks, and I'm finished. Just sign. He lunged for the bedside table, searching for a pen, but I'd had Sarah remove every one of them. The stranger is gone, Caleb, I said, finally looking him in the eye. And the shop isn't yours to sell. Miller and Saul invoked the buyback. The equipment is theirs, with my blessing. Caleb fell back against the wall, the air leaving his lungs in a long, pathetic hiss. He realized it then. He hadn't just lost the ranch. He had lost the shadow he'd been hiding in for 30 years. He looked at me, hoping for the old dad, the one who always bailed him out. But the old dad died on the mahogany table. 2 weeks later, I sat on my porch in North Scottsdale. The air was cool, smelling of creosote and distant rain. My left hand still had a slight tremor, but I could finally hold a coffee mug steady. Miller and Saul had stopped by earlier. They'd already moved the essential machinery to a smaller, more efficient space. The key man insurance payout I'd triggered by staying silent had covered their startup costs and every cent of my medical bills. They were thriving, and they were doing it without a business partner in a gray suit whispering in their ears. Caleb? He was gone. Once the accounts froze and the ranch deed was safely locked in a trust he couldn't touch, his friends vanished. Vance didn't stick around for a bankrupt partner. He was a vulture, and vultures don't circle empty deserts. He sent a letter last week. No questions about my recovery, no apology for the dinner table. He just asked if I'd reconsidered the investment opportunity in the ranch. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. The withdrawal was absolute. I looked out at the back 40. The land was quiet. No subdividing, no bulldozers. It would stay exactly as it should, untouched, silent, and mine. Sarah the nurse stops by twice a week now. We sit on the porch and talk about the shop, the weather, or her own kids. She's the only one who knows that for those 3 days in the hospital, I wasn't just a patient. I was a judge. People think revenge is a loud, violent thing. They think it's about fire and fury. But the most powerful revenge is simply becoming invisible to the people who only saw you as a resource. Caleb didn't lose his inheritance because I was cruel. He lost it because he stopped being a son the moment he stopped eating his steak to watch me die. I took a sip of my coffee. The sun was setting over the McDowell Mountains, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and gold. For the first time in my life, the machines were off. The noise was gone, and I could finally hear myself think. It was peaceful, and that peace, quiet, absolute, was the one thing Caleb could never afford.